Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. This podcast is ran by two ladies who play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome back to the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Jen.
And my name is Emily. Hello, once again. Welcome back. Time has passed. We are here, ever present, in your ears. How's it hanging, Jen?
That was a great poem. I loved that.
I've been very rhythmically inclined lately.
Only kind of, though.
Only sometimes. Basically, the ghost of a poet overtakes my body for a hot second, and then I say something, like, really cool, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, Emily, I didn't know you were a poet. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Such a poet.
Yeah, I'm pretty fucking cool. Like, I'm surprised you guys didn't know.
Right? But, yeah, I don't know. How was your last week, Jen? You get up to anything fun this week?
Not really. Just vibes. That's all. Just vibes.
Yep. I feel like I'm more or less in the same boat. I've been dealing with a lot of the carryover from my being poisoned last week, which I didn't elaborate on, but I probably should. Well, not the poisoning part, but it's just been chaotic. Our dear listeners, I had a rough week. First, I got poisoned. And then my partner's credit card was stolen. And then one of the people I'm responsible for at work crashed a very large truck full of very fragile goods, and I had to deal with that. It's been a rough go.
I can imagine. That sounds like a rough go.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I feel like other than that, I've just been like in a haze trying to get through this month at least, and then all of a sudden it's gonna be a new month, and then another new month, and then trying to plan for Vegas, because our listeners, I'm supposed to be going to Vegas for somebody's bachelorette party in May. We'll see.
Not mine.
No, not
mine.
Not Jen's, a different lady. So that'll be interesting too. It should be good. I'm hoping that, like, COVID, of course, doesn't ruin plans, because that's the big fear nowadays. But
that's true. I finally sold I don't know if I told our listeners this, but for Christmas I ended up getting my partner concert tickets, and he ended up getting me tickets to the same concert.
Yep.
And it was a very anticlimactic for both of us, but I just ended up selling those tickets, like the extra set that we had, so that's fun.
That is fun. I completely forgot that you guys did that. It's like recently my mom went through something similar, because she had bought, I think, her sister a backpack, like a purse backpack, for Christmas, and then her sister also bought her a purse backpack, and it was a nearly identical purse backpack. So then they were like, well,
great minds think alike.
Yep, great minds think alike. But I do be like that. I don't know. I feel like something else happened this week, but I can't really remember right now. Womp womp.
Who knows?
Lots of things, apparently. Yeah, I don't know. Just planning for Vegas, too, has been a big part of it. Like, I've been trying to find things that we can book ahead of time, because even though, like, May's, like, definitely a couple months away, for sure, I feel like, as far as, like, booking things go, like, some things book up really far ahead of time. Like, we just booked in for, Hell's Kitchen, is that right? It's, like, the Gordon Ramsay restaurant.
Hell's Kitchen was the show, but yeah, I know what you meant.
Okay, because so here's the thing. I never really watched the show. I don't really watch cooking shows, but I know who he is, because where's the lamb sauce, So, like, I know...
It's fucking raw.
It's fucking raw. Like, I know that stuff, but, like, I don't really know a whole lot about the show, but it was a big deal for the people I'm going with, so we got that stuff booked in, and that was, like... It was so crazy, too, because I was looking for that week, and it was like, oh, already, like, these times during the day are booked in, and I was like, already? It's like,
Yeah.
May's so far away still. But so we've been looking at other things just to make sure like we are able to see what we want to see, but
That's good. I mean, Vegas is fun. I haven't been in a very long time. So
if you were to go today, what would you want to do?
I actually have no idea. I have not really like looked into anything in Vegas in like a very long time.
See, I am a big loser, so one of the things on my list, or two of the things on my list, I want to go to I feel like, so do you remember when we were in school and I would make you watch that ghost show with me sometimes? Ghost Adventurers?
Yes.
So the guy who hosts that show, he has a museum in Vegas full of haunted objects. So I kind of want to go to that. And then also they have, I guess it's like one of the biggest thrift stores called Savers.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I was like, hey, I definitely want to go there. I feel like a Vegas thrift store would have so much treasure in it.
I feel like there would definitely be some very interesting items.
I know. So I really want to go there just for like to see if I can find anything like a novelty, you know, just something cool. And then I don't know. I feel like that's it for like extra things. Like for people I'm going with, some people are like, "Oh, I want to go to the wax museum." I do not want to do that. So I'm trying to make a list of things that are like interesting for me. Or I do want to see a jousting tournament because I know that's a thing that you can do there.
Me and my family did do that. They serve you like a medieval meal and you watch this jousting. Kind of fun.
See,
you know?
I want to go, but I also want to like drink and then see where that takes me because I feel like it's very like it could be fun. It could be fun.
You get a drink out of goblets, so that's fun.
See, very novelty. And yeah, I don't know. That's basically all I've been doing this week is just kind of that. It's not much, but it's honest work.
Truly. But with that, should we get into our wheel of questions?
We shall. I will spin for you.
Did you attend university?
No, I went to college. I've learned that there's a big distinction between the two, especially because I went to community college. Which is also a big difference than normal college. Nope. So I haven't. I feel like, was the school you went to a university or was it a college?
So I did 1 year at the same community college that you went to.
Yep.
Just because I had gotten into a different school and then at the last minute decided to kind of veer directions. So I was kind of like delaying a year, but my parents really wanted me to still go back to school.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I kind of just did a whatever year at a community college. And then I transferred to the university in which I got my bachelor's degree.
Okay, yeah, that checks out with my memories. I was like, I feel like there was more to that, but also I don't really remember. Because I feel like at that time, when you were going to that community college, I was actually still working. I did a year of just working.
Yeah, you were taking a year off, and I was basically taking a year off, but taking like 3 bullshit classes that I didn't like. I just picked random things. Like, I honestly had the most random selection of classes because my first semester I did like a family psychology class, which was like about like different sexual orientations. So we talked about pansexual, bisexuals, asexual people, heterosexuals. It was very interesting. Not at all what I thought the class was about, but it turned out to be interesting. And then I took a psychology class and a yoga class.
I was going to say, I remember I had this like very vivid memory of coming with you to college once, which is funny because I wasn't going. I feel like I just went for Tim Hortons and the vibes. But I remember you stressing because you were like, Emily, I cannot find my yoga class. It says it's upstairs in this hallway, but all I see are lockers. I don't know where the room is.
It was stressful. And then my second semester, I took a drama class and 2 other classes that I cannot remember at the moment. I think an English class. I genuinely don't remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what? Good times. I feel like I took grandma class. Whoa. I mean, probably. Drama class. Or drama class. But I don't know. I feel like when I went, I feel like I've mostly blocked out those memories. Because I didn't really like.
Well, you also, like, applied to a program. I was just doing open studies. Mm-hmm. Because, like I said, I had gotten into another university and at the last minute decided not to go.
Mm-hmm. And then you ended up going the next year anyways. And you abandoned me.
Well, I ended up going to a different university into a completely different programming. Yeah. I was originally planning on being an addictions counselor. And then I ended up studying journalism, so...
Both have writing involved.
True.
I guess. I know, that's like me going to school for communications, and now I work in the fitness industry. Here we are.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I can't really expand on that because that was basically it. I did not go to university though. I feel like it's interesting though because when people do talk about going to university, it sounds like such like just a vastly different experience than what I had with school because like to start with, I didn't think there was that big of a difference. And then like once you talk to people who have like you were saying like gone to universities and stuff, and all of a sudden they're like talking about like Kappa Sigma and like sororities. I'm like, who? What? We didn't have those.
We did have sorority and a fraternity. We had one sorority and one fraternity at the university I attended. I really had no I knew I was friends with a girl who was in the sorority, but like I didn't really pay that much attention to that side of stuff at all.
See, I was just kind of like, I don't really understand what they are. Are they just like clubs basically?
Kind of. At our university, they used to live in like a house together, mm-hmm. but the house had disbanded or something, and then it turned into the campus radio station, which I worked at.
Oh, weird. Okay. I did not know that there used to be a sorority house. I remember when you took me to your university once and you showed me the radio house.
Yeah, it was weird. The sorority donated it to our campus radio station, which was always underfunded, but it seems like they're doing better now. I remember when I was there, a big thing was they needed a new tower for like the signal or whatever, mm-hmm. and I've heard that they've finally gotten that, so good for them.
They found the funds. Good for them. Yeah, I don't know. See, the only thing I know about sororities is that that's like another way of saying a community of female fish if you're in the fishing community. So anytime somebody mentions a sorority, all I have in my head is like just tons of female beta fish. Then that's all I can think about.
I mean, fair enough.
Right? Same-ish, I feel. But should we spin for our next question?
Spin again. What topic in post-secondary, so that's college and university, did you find most interesting to study? Not one that you necessarily studied yourself, but if you were going to go back and you could just pick any random class to be a part of, what would you be interested in learning more about?
See, I don't know. I feel like I'm not a big school person. Like, learning is fine, but I find just, like, the whole sitting in a classroom thing, like, and, like, studying from a textbook, it makes me want to rip my hair out. I hate it. As far as subjects go, I don't know. I personally did always really like the classes where it didn't really feel like you were in school, like, anything to do that was, like, kind of artistic. But also, it's very expensive to go to school and do anything that's, like, artistic, because it doesn't really have value workplace-wise. And it's usually just a hole to sink money into.
I disagree, because, I mean, technically I have an arts degree.
Well, not a Bachelor of Arts. I'm talking, like, literally going to art class.
I don't know. I think I, like, just personally feel like there is value in education in general. I love school. Honestly, I want to go back to grad school because I'm just like, I miss being a student.
That's funny. I can't. If somebody was to put a multiple choice test down in front of me, I think I would like vomit and then my spirit would disappear. Like, I don't know what I would do.
But I think that's one big distinction. I mean, obviously it's program dependent, but one big distinction in my mind between like college and university is generally more like the classes are more specific and less general. So there's less learning out of a textbook, and it's more like, you know, research and like, you know, creating a thesis and like looking into different things. And that's why I love like media studies, because it's not like reading out of a textbook. You're like literally like looking at new media as like your homework.
Okay. See, that's so like kind of going back to what I was saying before. So I'm not a big like I said, not necessarily that part with the whole studying textbook thing. I'm very much the kind of person where I feel like if I was to go back, I would want to be able to do something where I was more like
hands-on.
Yeah, like hands-on, like working on different projects, like something that's actually intellectually stimulating. I don't really find a lot of like interest in things where they're just like, oh, study from this chapter and then we're gonna do a test and then just re-summarize what you learned in this chapter. Like, I understand why that's a thing, but it's not really my bag. So I don't actually know if I have a particular like thing in mind that I would go back and revisit, but it would have to be something where I'm like more physically like hands-on with the work that I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like the program I did, which was journalism at the end of the day, was a lot like that. It was a lot of like practical skills and like learning the craft and like doing and watching documentaries and like a lot of self-learning. Which I feel like would be more your speed.
Oh, probably, yeah. Because that was my whole thing. So when I did communications, it's a lot of just straight up like studying from the textbook and paperwork, and that for me wasn't super awesome. But
yeah,
it do be like that though, because now I'm in the fitness industry, which is very hands-on in general. So I don't know, maybe if I went back I would do something related like kinesiology or something. I don't know, I haven't really thought about it, if I'm gonna be honest.
Fair. I would love to go to grad school for creative writing.
That could be cool. Go little rock star.
Consider this my application.
Okay. That's really funny. Alright, should we spin for our next question?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of already answered this, but would you go back to would you go back to college or university?
I'll stay with being kind of like on the fence. I feel like if there was something that came up where I'm like, oh, this is really interesting, I didn't know that this was an option, I would love to look more into this, then maybe. But as of right now, there's not really anything that piques my interest.
Fair. My answer is yes, I would like to go back to university.
All right, since we've covered this, let's move on to our next question.
Would you like to be a part of a research experiment? So like, you know, like those like studies where they like put you in a room and they're like, you can have the cupcake now, or if you wait 20 minutes you can have 3 cupcakes.
Yes.
Why?
Because I find that whole thing very interesting, and I like the idea of being able to participate in research that you might not necessarily know what the outcome is. However, I will say that I would want to know what would be being done to me before getting into it. Like, I wouldn't want to be just like, oh, be a professional guinea pig, we'll do stuff to you. I wouldn't sign up for that, because I'd be like, okay, like, are you turning me into a mutant? Am I gonna come out of this poisoned again? No, I would want to know. Like, if it was like, say for example, like a behavior thing, like what you were saying, like, oh, like if you wait 20 minutes you get 3 cupcakes, I'd be like, yeah, sure, okay. But you see, I don't even like cupcakes, so I just eat the one because I wouldn't want 3 cupcakes. But you know, I think that would be really interesting and fun though, especially if you were contributing to like say somebody else's studies.
For sure. I'm on the fence. Like, part of me is like, maybe if it was a behavioral thing, because I like to learn things about myself, you know, and like figure out what my habits are. I find that very interesting. But like, I don't think I could ever be like a test subject when they like do like skincare tests on people.
Oh
and
God,
stuff.
no,
Like,
I wouldn't do that.
That frightens me a little. Not that I want it tested on animals, because I don't. And I think it's important to do those clinical testings.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I would not personally want to be a test subject.
No, because, like, for me, I feel like it's hard. I wouldn't do anything quite like that, just because, I struggle enough with my skin and other things. I don't need more challenges. But like I said, it would really depend on what it is. Like I do think it's interesting to do stuff like that, but yeah, no, I would definitely want to know ahead of time. Like say like if it was like Ghostbusters and it's like, oh, if you can telekinetically see this picture, you know, you don't get shocked, but if you can't, then you get shocked. Maybe not, because I feel like I would get hella electrocuted. But yeah, I don't know. So I'll say yes, but with transparency.
I mean, any good ethical experiment should have transparency.
Yes, because who knows? Maybe I would just be signing up to be like in the next Glass Animal songs where they write a song about my life and the study is really just me talking about myself. Because that could be interesting.
It could, and then a musical is made about you, and then all of a sudden you are a fairy.
And then all of a sudden I've become a fairy and folklore. And then I feature on Taylor Swift's album Folklore as a bonus song.
I mean, that already came out, so you might have to be on Woodvale, the unconfirmed third album I was telling you about.
Oh, yes, of course, that one. The one that I meant to say but forgot about. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I think that's all of our questions.
It is. Do you have any guesses about what my story is for you today?
Crime.
There is an element of crime.
In university, somebody is murdered in a study room. That's what I have for you.
You're on the right track, but you're not quite there.
For somebody killed somebody in a study room in university as a part of a study.
Oh! No.
Oh, okay. That's it. That's all I thought.
All right. Well, I in that case, I'll just get on with it today.
I'm ready.
So, today I'm going to tell you about a man. His name is Philip Zimbardo, and he was born in New York City on March 23rd, 1933, to a family of Italian immigrants from Sicily. Early in life, he experienced discrimination and prejudice, growing up poor on welfare, and being Italian, because they were quite discriminated against.
Right, yeah.
He was often mistaken for other races and ethnicities, such as Jewish, Puerto Rican, or Black, and Philip has said that these experiences early in life triggered his curiosity about people's behavior, and later influenced his research in school.
There you have it.
There you have it. Our man, he completed his BA with a triple major in psychology, sociology, and anthropology from Brooklyn College in 1954, where he graduated summa cum laude, which basically is Latin for honors. It's like a high distinction, or it used to be. It's not really used that much anymore. Mm-hmm. He completed his Master's of Science in 1955 and PhD in 1959 in psychology from Yale University. And while at Yale, he married a fellow graduate student named Rose Albanor. They had a son in 1962 and divorced in 1971. He taught at Yale from 1959 to 1960, and from 1960 to 1967, he was a professor of psychology at New York University College of Arts and Science. And from 1967 to 1968, he taught at Columbia, and then finally, in 1968, he joined the faculty at Stanford University.
Stanford? Didn't Rory Gilmore go there?
She went to Yale.
Oh yeah, no, she went to Yale. Who's that character who went to Stanford then? I feel like that's like a pretty common thing for like shows or television or something. It rings a bell.
I mean, Miley and Lily from Hannah Montana went to Stanford together.
You know I love that show.
I feel like there's probably other examples, but that's what's at top of mind for me.
Listen, if my brain connects the dots later, I'll let you know. But I feel like there's somebody in particular that I'm thinking of, but I can't remember the name right now.
All right. I don't know if you've guessed it by yet, but our man Philip had a very famous research experiment that he did while at Stanford.
Isn't this the Stanford Prison Experiment?
It is.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, not really. But but I know what this is. Okay.
Yes. So the Stanford Prison Experiment was a role play and simulation held at Stanford University in the summer of 1971. It was intended to examine the effects of situational variables on participants' reactions and behaviors in a 2-week simulation of a prison environment. Stanford psychology professor Philip Zimbardo led the research team who conducted the experiment. The study was funded by the U.S. Office of Naval Research to understand the antisocial behavior. The United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps wanted to investigate conflict between military guards and prisoners.
Yep.
So, after receiving approval from the university to conduct the experiment, study participants were recruited using an ad in the Help Wanted section of the Palo Alto Times and the Stanford Daily newspapers in August 1971. The ad read, "Male college students needed for psychological study of prison life, $15 per day for 1 to 2 weeks, beginning August 14th. For further information and applications, come to room 248, Jordan Hall, Stanford University." 75 men applied, and after screening assessments and interviews, 24 were selected to participate in a 2-week prison simulation. The applicants were predominantly white, middle class, and appeared to be psychologically stable and healthy. The group of subjects was intentionally selected to exclude those with criminal backgrounds, psychological impairments, or medical problems. On a random basis, half of the subjects were assigned the role of guard, 9 plus 3 potential substitutes, and half were assigned to the role of prisoners, also 9 with 3 potential substitutes. They agreed to participate for a 7 to 14-day period for $15 per day, which is roughly equivalent to $101 a day in today. Professor Philip took on the role of superintendent, and an undergrad research assistant, David Joffe, took on the role of the warden. The day before the experiment began, small mock prison cells were set up to hold 3 prisoners each. There was a small corridor for the prison yard and a closet for solitary confinement, and a bigger room across from the prisoners for the guards and warden. The experiment was conducted in a 35-foot section of the basement of Jordan Hall, which is Stanford's psychology building. And the prison had 2 fabricated walls, one at the entrance and one at the cell wall to block observation. Each cell was unlit and was intended to hold 3, and had a cot with a mattress, sheet, and pillow for each prisoner. Prisoners were confined and were to stay in their cells and the yard all day and night until the end of the study. In contrast, the guards were to stay in a different environment, separate from the prisoners. The guards were given access to special areas for rest and relaxation, and the guards were told to work in teams of 3 to 8 hour shifts. The guards were not required to stay on site after their shift either.
So the prisoners who had been selected were there for the full time then? Like day and night?
Yeah, they couldn't go home. They had to stay there the whole time, whereas the guards were treated like real guards where they were on a shift and then they could go home at the end of the night and do whatever they wanted.
Okay. Interesting. See, I know a little about this, but not like a whole ton. I didn't realize that there was like, it was like done truly out of the college. I had this like whole thought in my head where it was done separately, like off campus.
Nope, it was right on campus.
So bizarre. All right.
So the researchers held an orientation session for the guards the day before the experiment began, during which guards were instructed not to harm the prisoners physically or withhold food or drink, but to maintain law and order. Guards were, however, encouraged by researchers to exhibit abusive behavior towards the prisoners. The researchers provided the guards with wooden batons to establish their status, clothing similar to that of an actual prison guard, which was a khaki shirt and pants from a local military surplus store, and mirrored sunglasses to prevent eye contact and create anonymity. Based on the recordings from the experiment, guards were instructed by the researchers to disrespect the prisoners and make them feel submissive, helpless, and unheard. For example, they had to refer to prisoners by their number rather than by name. This, according to Professor Philip, was intended to diminish the prisoners' individuality and leave them with no control, and so that they learned that they had little effect in what happened to them, ultimately causing them to stop responding and to just give up and be submissive.
Okay.
In recordings of the orientation that were released almost a decade after it happened, Philip can be heard saying this to his new guards, quote, "We cannot physically abuse or torture them. We can create boredom. We can create a sense of frustration. We can create fear in them to some degree. We have total power in the situation. They have none." Which I don't love.
No, so far not loving anything I'm hearing, but I understand why for the sake of the experiment, but I still don't love it.
So, Professor Philip explained that guard orientations in the prison systems instruct the guards to assert power over the prisoners. And further, he asserted that his fellow researchers explicitly instructed the guards not to physically inflict harm on them, but at the same time to make them feel like they were in an actual prison. The theory was that asking a person role-playing a guard in a prison simulation to be firm and, quote, in the action is mild compared to the pressure exerted by actual wardens and superior officers in real-life prison and military settings, where guards failing to fully participate can face disciplinary hearings, being demoted, or being dismissed from their jobs. The official website of the experiment describes the experiment's goal as this: "We wanted to see what the psychological effects of becoming a prisoner or a guard. To do this, we decided to set up a simulated prison and then carefully note the effects of this institution on the behavior of all those within its walls." And with that, I'm going to take you through the timeline of the experiment.
All right, give it to me.
So, the first official day of the experiment was August 15th, 1971. The experiment began with the prisoners being arrested in their own neighborhoods by real Palo Alto police. The men were arrested for violating Penal Codes 211 and 459, which is armed robbery and burglary. They were searched and handcuffed by police and then led into the rear of a waiting police car. The participants were intentionally not informed that they were to be arrested, as the researchers wanted it to come as a surprise, which I don't love.
No. So far sounding worse and worse when I didn't think it was possible to get worse, but okay.
This was a breach of the ethics of Professor Philip's own contract that all of the participants had signed, but we're just gonna let that one go, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
So the cars took them to Palo Alto Police Station, where the men were booked, fingerprinted, moved to a holding cell, and blindfolded. Finally, they were transported to Stanford County Prison, also known as the Stanford University Psychology Department, in this experiment. All of these actions were video documented by a local San Francisco TV station reporter traveling around in Professor Philip's car. Meanwhile, 3 guards prepared for the arrival of the inmates in the Stanford County Jail. They were systematically strip searched, given their new identities, inmate identification numbers, and a uniform. Prisoners were uncomfortable, ill-fitting smocks and stocking caps, as well as a chain around one ankle. Guards were instructed to call prisoners by their assigned numbers, which was sewn on to their uniforms. The prisoners were then greeted by the warden, who conveyed the seriousness of their offense and their new status as a prisoner. And with the rules of the prison presented to them, the inmates were taken to their cells for the rest of the day. And that ended day 1 of the experiment.
That's only day 1?
That's only day 1.
Oh, jeez. I thought this was a synopsis. Okay, this is horrific.
So day 2, shit starts to hit the fan.
Okay,
let me tell you.
I'm ready.
So it was Monday, August 16th. Guards referred to prisoners by their identification and confined them to their small cells. At 2:30 a.m., the prisoners rebelled against the guards' wake-up calls of whistles and clanging of batons. Prisoners refused to leave their cells to eat in the yard, ripped off their inmate tag numbers, took off their stocking caps, and insulted the guards. In response, the guards sprayed fire extinguishers at the prisoners to reassert control. The 3 backup guards were called in to help regain control of the prison. Guards removed all of the prisoners' clothes, removed mattresses, and sentenced the main instigators to time in the hole. They attempted to dissuade any further rebellion by using psychological warfare. One of the guards said to the other that, quote, "These are dangerous prisoners." So,
well, hang on. Let's just backtrack again here. So all this is happening and they're still all, like, university students?
yes.
Okay, and, like, this is the second day?
Like, less than 48 hours and there's already a fucking revolt.
Yeah, like, I was gonna say, the second day. Like, what? What?
So, 22-year-old Douglas Corpy, who is a slim, short-statured Berkeley grad, was one of the prisoners sent to the hole for inciting a riot. He was locked in the dark closet in the basement of the Stanford Psychology Department, naked beneath a thin white smock bearing the number 8612, screaming his head off. He iconically said, quote, "I mean it, Jesus Christ, I'm burning up inside." He yelled and kicked furiously at the door. He said, quote, "Don't you know, I want to get out. All of this is fucked up inside. I can't stand another night. I just can't take it anymore."
And this is still the second day?
Yes, we're still on day 2.
Oh my god.
Also on day 2, another prisoner, Richard Yarko, recalled being stunned after asking a staff member how to quit and learning that he couldn't. A third prisoner, Clay Ramsey, was also dismayed on discovering that he was trapped, that he started a hunger strike. He said, quote, "I regard it as a real prison because in order to get out, you had to do something that made them worry about their liability." So I will quickly note on that Professor Philip denies this. He says that they could leave at any time. In like a much later interview with Ben Blum in an online magazine called Medium, Philip said that Richard and Douglas's accusations of not being allowed to leave were baseless. However, a transcript from the experiment was unearthed by Lee Texier of a taped conversation between Philip and his staff on day 3, and he said this: "An interesting thing was the guys who came in yesterday, the 2 guys who came in and said they wanted to leave, and I said no. There are only 2 conditions under which you can leave, medical help or psychiatric. I think they really believed they can't get out."
Well, because he fucking told them he can't get out. Like, what is this guy? I'm starting to think that this guy's not mentally sound. How do you hold this type of experiment and then, like, and then manipulate that? Especially because, like, these people, obviously, it's the second day. These people know they're not in a real prison. They know that. It's only the second day. But, like, to be that kind of person who's like, oh, yeah, like, I told them they can't leave, and they just, like, believed me. It's like, no fucking duh, you're leading the study. You're the person who's supposed to be in charge of the study. That's, like, a normal response to have. That's like asking your teacher if you can leave to go to the bathroom and they say no. What are you going to do?
It's insane. So after hearing the transcript, Philip then acknowledged that the informed consent forms which subjects signed that had included an explicit safe phrase, which was, quote, "I quit the experiment." Only that precise phrase would trigger their release. None of them said that, Philip said.
But how many of these people even read that? You know what I mean?
I know. They said, "I want out, I want a doctor, I want my mother, etc., etc." Essentially, I was saying you have to say, quote, "I quit the experiment." But the informed consent forms that he's referring to there are available online on his own website, and they contain no mention of the phrase, quote, "I quit the experiment."
Right, because he was getting what he wanted out of his experiment, and he didn't want people to quit it. That's the whole point. He's full of garbage lies because he's, so far to me, sounding like a garbage human.
But I digress. Let's move on to day 3, which was Tuesday, August 17th. So, in order to restrict further acts of disobedience, the guards separated and rewarded prisoners who had minor roles in the rebellion. The 3 spent time in the goods cell, where they received clothing, beds, and food, which was denied to the rest of the jail population. After an estimated 12 hours, the 3 returned to their old cells that lacked beds. Guards were allowed to abuse their power to humiliate the inmates. They had prisoners count off and do push-ups arbitrarily, restricted access to the bathrooms, and forced them to relieve themselves in a bucket in their cells. The first prisoner to leave the experiment was Douglas Corpy, prisoner 8612, who was yelling, "I'm burning up inside," or whatever, when he was in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
After 36 hours, he had his mental breakdown, which is what got him released. And after seeing his suffering, research assistant Craig Haney decided to release him. So at least someone has a little bit of compassion.
So at least one person on the team has common sense and empathy. Glad to know.
So Wednesday, August 18th was day 4, and witnessing that guards divided prisoners based on their good or rebellious behavior, the inmates started to distance themselves from one another. Rioters believed that other prisoners were snitches and vice versa. Other prisoners saw the rebels as a threat to the status quo since they wanted to have their mattresses and clothes again instead of just being naked and sleeping on the floor, you know.
Fair enough. But, like, just to backtrack again, so there's for sure 9 guards and for sure 9 prisoners. Is that it? There's only 9 of each?
Yes.
That's
with
not
3
a lot of
subs. So,
people.
like, they brought in extra guards during the riot, but, like...
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I think I understand now. Because, yeah, 9 people's not a lot of people.
No, it's really not. But now one's gone home, so they're down to 8 prisoners.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
Yes. So prisoner 819 began showing symptoms of distress. He began crying in his cell. A priest was brought in to speak with him, but 891 declined to talk and instead asked for a medical doctor. After hearing him cry, Professor Philip reassured him of his actual identity and removed the prisoner. And when 891 was leaving, the guards told the remaining inmates loudly and repeatedly to yell at him as he was leaving, 891 is a bad prisoner.
That is really messed up. So he got removed from the experiment, and then the prisoners still ganged up on him for being removed from the experiment?
Yeah, the guards were forcing them to yell, "Oh, you're a bad prisoner," as he's, like, leaving because he doesn't want to do it anymore.
But that's fucked up anyways, because why? Here's my thing. Why? If they're not a part of the experiment anymore, you're subjecting them to more torture when they've already tapped out of the experiment.
Yep. It's insane. You're right.
Okay, alright, just wanted to clarify that, because that's fucked up. Alright, I guess let's move on.
So Thursday, August 19th was day 5, and the day was scheduled for visitations by friends and family of the inmates in order to stimulate the prison experience. Professor Philip and the guards made visitors wait for long periods of time in order to see their loved ones, and only 2 visitors could see any one prisoner, and only for 10 minutes while a guard watched.
Mm-hmm.
Parents grew concerned about their son's well-being and whether they had enough to eat. Some parents left with plans to contact a lawyer to gain early release of their children.
Mm-hmm. Right, because as a part of the experiment, they would have signed a contract. Yeah.
The sons would have, because they're over 18. But like after seeing them, their parents are like,
Yeah, they're like, this is fucked up. Like, let's get you out of here, homie. Yeah, I get it.
On the same day, Professor Philip's colleague Gordon H. Bauer arrived to check on the experiment and questioned Professor Philip about what the independent variable of the research was. Christina Malash, who was Philip's girlfriend at the time, also visited the prison that night and was distressed by observing the guards abusing the prisoners, forcing them to wear bags over their heads, and she challenged Professor Philip about his lack of caring oversight and the immortality of the study. Finally, she made evident that he had been changed by his role as superintendent into someone she did not recognize and did not like. Her direct challenges prompted him to end the experiment the next day.
Hang on, I just have a sidebar. That's fucking crazy that even as a fake superintendent and the lead of the study, it actually altered his perception of his own experiment. That's fucked up. And here's the thing. A week is not that long. It's been 4 days. Like, to that degree where somebody comes to visit you who's, like, a normal fucking person, and they're like, oh my god, like, what on earth is happening in here? Like, you've lost your mind. Like, in only 4 days?
5 days.
Oh, 5 days. Not even a friggin' week yet. Like, it would be... I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. Could you imagine going and visiting your partner at work, like, 5 days from today, and they are, like, a fake superintendent of a prison, and people are getting beat over the... beat with a bag on their head, and they're like, yeah, they're not allowed to leave. I lead this experiment, and they're not allowed to leave because I'm the superintendent. I'd be like... Okay, first of all,
holy fuck, what's going on?
The police. Second of all, we are breaking up. Third of all, goodbye forever. This is terrible.
Well, they actually ended up getting married, so apparently she can see past it.
Girl, red flags, come on. Come on. It doesn't get more
total
red flag than that.
So, let me tell you about day 6, which was the final day of the experiment, August 20th, which was Friday. Mm-hmm. Due to Christina's outrage, the parents' concerns, and increasing brutality exhibited by guards in the experiment, Professor Philip ended the study on day 6. Professor Philip gathered the participants, guards, prisoners, and researchers to let them know that the experiment was over and arranged to pay them the full fee for 14 days of $210, which would be equivalent to $1,435 now, roughly. Professor Philip then met for several hours of informed debriefing, first with all of the prisoners, then the guards, and finally everyone came together to share their experiences. Next, all of the participants were asked to complete a personal retrospective to be mailed to him subsequently, and finally, all participants were invited to return a week later to share their opinions and emotions. After the experiment wrapped, the physical components of the Stanford County Jail were taken down and out of the basement of Jordan Hall, and the cells returned to their usual function as grad student offices. After debriefing with everyone, Professor Philip and his graduate student research team, Craig Henney and Curtis Banks, began compiling and analyzing the multiple sources of data. He started the grant agreement with the Office of Naval Research, including a requirement to publish data in their journal, the Naval Research Reviews. He also said that the International Journal of Criminology and Penology invited him to write about his study in their journal, and then he wrote an article with the New York Times Magazine to share the findings with a broader audience. He stated that the article still needed to pass through a very strict requirements of the American Psychologist, which is the official journal of the American Psychology Association, in order to be published. And after publishing the article in the American Psychologist, the findings were also reported in other peer-reviewed journals and books. According to Professor Phillips' interpretation of the experiment, it demonstrated that the simulated prison situation, rather than individual personality traits, caused the participants' behavior. Using this situational attribution, the results are compatible with those of Milgram experiment, where participants compiled with orders to administer seemingly dangerous and potentially lethal electric shocks to a shill. So, there's been other fucked up experiments that his fucked up experiment was compared to.
Ah, amazing. Love that for him.
In 1997, an article from the Stanford News Service described the experiment's goal as this: Professor Phillips' primary reason for conducting the experiment was to focus on the power of roles, rules, symbols, group identity, and situational validation of behavior that generally would repulse ordinary individuals. Quote, I had been conducting research for some years on de-individualism, vandalism, and dehumanization that illustrated the ease with which ordinary people could be led to engage in antisocial acts by putting them in situations where they felt anonymous or that they could perceive of others in ways that made them less human, as enemies or objects, said Professor Philip to the Toronto Symposium in the summer of 96. Conclusions and observations drawn by the experiment were largely subjective and anecdotal, and the experiment is practically impossible for other researchers to accurately reproduce because it's highly unethical.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably because it's literally torturing people in the most literal sense of the word literally.
Yep. Yep. In 1973, Eric Form argued as only a third of the guards displayed sadistic behaviors, the experiment is more accurately an example of how a situation cannot influence a person's behavior. He states that there were generalizations in the experiment's results and argued that the personality of an individual does not affect the behavior when imprisoned. This ran counter to the study's conclusion that the prison situation itself controls the individual's behavior. Forum also argued that the methods employed to screen participants could not determine the amount of sadism in the subjects. The experiment has also been used to illustrate cognitive dissonance theory and the power of authority. Participants' behavior may have been shaped by knowing that they were watched, which is known as the Hawthorne effect, and instead of being restrained by fear of an observer, guards may have been behaving more aggressively when they knew that supervisors observing them did not step in to restrain them. So usually, if you know that someone's going to see you do a bad thing, you might not do it because there's someone to catch you. But if you know that that person watching doesn't care if you do it, you might do it anyway. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh boy. I don't know. There's a lot of things. I understand. I don't know. I just can't. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? This is such.
I know what you mean.
It's just icky, and I understand why it was done. But let
me finish. So, many have argued that the validity and merit of the research findings were significantly affected by the Stanford Prison Experiment and the selection bias resulting from the Stanford Prison Experiment recruitment and selection. Douglas Corpy's famous breakdown on day 2 of the experiment came only 36 hours into it and was set off by cruelty of his peers. However, Douglas, who is now a forensic psychologist himself, says that it was all a sham. He said, quote, "Anybody who is a clinician would have known that I was faking. If you listen to the tape, it's not subtle. I'm not that good at acting. I mean, I think I do a fairly good job, but I'm more hysterical than psychotic." He says that his dramatic performance in the experiment was indeed inspired by fear, but not by the abusive guards. Instead, he was worried about failing to get into grad school. He said, quote, "The reason I took the job was that I thought I'd have every day to sit around by myself and study for the graduate record exams." And he said that he was scheduled to take the test just after the study concluded. Shortly after the experiment began, he asked for his textbooks so that he could study, and the prison staff refused. The next day, Douglas asked again, and again they refused. At that point, he decided there was, as he put it, no point to this job. First, Douglas tried faking a stomach ache, and when that didn't work, he tried faking a breakdown, and far from feeling traumatized, he added that he had actually enjoyed himself for much of the short time that he was in jail, other than a tussle with the guards over his bed. He said, quote, "The first day was really fun. The rebellion was fun. There was no repercussions. We all knew the guards couldn't hurt us. They couldn't hit us. They were white college kids just like us. So it was a very safe situation. It was just a job. If you listen to the tape, you can hear my voice. I have a great job. I get to yell and scream and act all hysterical, and I get to act like a prisoner. I was being a good employee. it was a great time. The controversial experiment gained a large amount of publicity over the ensuing decades, which the experiment's scientific validity has been discredited and its methods described as deeply flawed and a lie. The experiment was described in many introductory social psychology textbooks, although some excluded due to concerns about its methodology and ethics. In 2019, the American Psychology Association advised of, quote, the need for teachers and textbook authors to both revise and repurpose the coverage of the experiment in their classes and textbooks respectfully. While the experiment cannot be ethically replicated, intense abuse and conflict between guards and prisoners is seen in actual prison. But was it really seen here? It's kind of hard to tell if they were all just putting on a show or what actually happened. In 2005, an article was published by Carlo Prescott in the Stanford Daily explaining that antagonistic tactics used by the guards were ones that he had experienced during his time spent in a real prison, San Quentin, and he shared each one in detail with the researchers prior to the experiment. In Prescott's opinion, the participants in the experiment, having no experience as a prison guard, could not have acted in the way they did unless they had been told of the explicit details of the actions they took. Professor Philip had stated that he believed that the article was not written by Prescott, but rather screenwriter and producer Michael Lazzaro, who had unsuccessfully attempted to get the film rights to the story of the Stanford Prison Experiment. And in Professor Philip's opinion, Prescott would not have written in such a legalistic way, and Professor Philip claims that in phone records and emails obtained by Brett Emroy, the Stanford Prison Experiment movie's producer, asserted Prescott was not the author.
Okay.
So basically, our man Phillips is pissed that people are dissing his experiment, even though he, before this experiment had happened, he had never been to prison and never even visited a prison. So right. A lot of people are like, how can you replicate a real prison when you've never
been to one,
experienced it?
Right. Unless you know somebody personally who can then explain to you what that experience is like.
Which is what Prescott was claiming, was that he was the one who told them. But then Professor Philip was like, nah, that never happened.
Right. Okay. See, I don't know. I have my own theory about this. So, first of all, I do think it was really fucked up and unethical for a lot of things. But on the flip side, though, I keep thinking about how wild it is for all this to happen, especially because there was only 18 people. They were evenly divided between guards and prisoners, unless you're including the flex, like you said, the 3 for the guards, for the riot and stuff like that. And that sort of thing, and everybody was mentally sound. I feel like this would be a bit different if it was somebody who already was privy to delusions before entering this study. But I don't honestly think that 5 days is enough time for you to just genuinely lose your mind in a fake prison setting.
Yeah, I mean, there has been some stuff that's come out where a few of the people who were in the experiment were going to sue because they feel like they were tortured, but didn't, mainly out of feeling not wanting to be made fun of, or feeling like they, wouldn't be taken seriously.
Okay.
So that's an interesting aspect of it. But I think also, I don't know, it's hard because I think some of the students were definitely playing up their role and just wanted out and would do whatever it took to get out. So I think that adds an element of what can you trust from the research,
Right. And I do think there's probably some things that are accurate, a lot of the behaviors of people, I think, would be fair. But in order for it to be a truly accurate study, I'm not saying that this obviously needs to be revisited because, but I just don't know if 5 days is accurate, because it's like what you were saying, there would be a lot of people who, if you're of sound mind and you're a part of an experiment, you understand that you're in an experiment. That doesn't just disappear after 1 day of being in the experiment.
Yeah. And I think it's hard because I can see how people put in that guard position would potentially become more aggressive or, do things
Well,
that they wouldn't normally do, because that's genuinely how it is in real prisons where, these people are put into a position of power.
and that's the thing, is if somebody is already a little bit sadistic, putting them in that place of power just gives them an opportunity to be more sadistic. I don't think that that's because they were a guard. I think it was because they were put in a situation where it was deemed as being like something they were allowed to do, or it's like okay, right? Like I don't think that necessarily has to do with being in the prison guard role. I think that has to do with who you were before you entered the experiment.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people really critique the guard orientation that happened before the experiment started by being like, you were coaching them and telling them to be cruel. So you kind of mess up your own fucking experiment before it even started. Too.
Well, and it's like they don't do that for like actual prison guards. Like, not to be too in depth with our listeners here, but I've been in a jail before for work, and the whole setup of it's not quite like that. Like, as from the people I've talked to who work in the jail, like, from what I've been told, like, they're told basically that they are just in like a role of like protecting and serving, and that they need to make sure that they're protecting the inmates from each other, and like that there's a reason that these people are in here, and there's like a big coaching aspect. It's not like be as cruel as you physically can. Like, nobody gets told to do that.
Yeah, I think it for sure happens where there are cruel guards who are
of course, yeah,
genuinely just bad to other people, but like it's just kind of,
that's not, I think, for the purpose of this
experiment, they muddied it too much. And I think with Philip and his like research assistant being like involved as the superintendent, the warden, they were too involved. I feel like they needed to be more removed from the situation.
For a studying aspect, they definitely were too involved. I don't think that a person who's meant to be a researcher of the study needs to also engage in an active role of the study, because then you are also enabling behaviors and trying to fit a role outside of that of somebody who is studying it. You're more fitting to the role of a performer. It is a conflict of interest, and then you're also manipulating the narrative to get the result that you want. And there's just like it feels like it's more. I'm getting less research out of it than I am more of like satiating a sadistic interest. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I totally understand where you're coming from with that.
Right? Like, it's not necessarily about the actual study behind it, even though that might be a factor of it. Like, with certain decisions that were made, like you were saying, taking an active role in the study, having it so that you are coaching people to be cruel to these prisoners, like on day one or whatever it was, right? And then just therefore the actions that we're engaging after that, and then being like, oh, it was too crazy. Like, it escalated so fast. It's like, hey, but those factors were put into place by you, and then you acted in the study as a person who's responsible for these actions. So you can't sit there and be surprised and then also tell people they're not allowed to leave. Like, it's all very sadistic. I feel like a responsible researcher would, like you said, not be in that role. They would not be alluding to people that they can't leave, or just straight up telling them that they can't leave when it is still a part of a study. And they would try to neutralize all of the aspects of the study as far as they could, rather than intentionally putting a negative twist onto any of the fields. You know what I mean?
100%. I feel like he wanted a specific result, so he manipulated the factors into getting that result, which was, oh, people changed their behavior and became so cruel.
Yes, this whole prison setup is meant and designed to be cruel, where it's like, okay, but you also can't compare prisons to each other either, because in different countries, prisons are going to be different. In different, like, parts of the world, it's going to be different. Between different jails, it's going to be different depending on who the staff are, who's in charge, like, who are the prisoner types. Like, you can't deem it all into one thing and be like, this is what happens every single time.
Yeah, it's just generalizing rarely works.
It's very general. And I think there's something mentally wrong with this guy. I'm going to say it. I don't think that you go into something like this and do what you did without having sadistic qualities yourself. Like, I do think that he intentionally had done certain things a certain way because either he had a interest in it in a way that's probably not all that great, or he was just really or he had just like this idea in his head on how he wanted things to go, and it went the way he wanted. Or it didn't go the way he wanted. Maybe he expected things to be worse. I don't really know. But either way, seems fishy to me, and I don't like what he has to say about all this stuff, especially all the denials that come in afterwards, and having somebody attest that his role as a superintendent of this fake prison, like, changed his personality. Don't love that either.
That's fucking spooky, dude.
Well, did he have a psych evaluation or his, like, warden fellow before being enrolled in the study either?
Not that I know of.
See, if you're being a part of the study and a part of the critiques is that you need to be psychologically evaluated to see if you're actually fit for the role, why wouldn't they have one done?
See, but I think, like, that's part, like, they were just way too involved. They should have, like, fully removed themselves from the situation, and I think they would have gotten more accurate results.
Yeah, but it wasn't about the research, honestly. Like, in anything I've heard that you've told me, it was not about the research. They started a project with probably certain intentions, got way too involved in it, and then this is what happened.
It do be like that sometimes.
It do be like that. But is that the end of the episode then?
That is the end of our episode today. I hope you enjoyed.
As much as I can. I'm a little angry, but that's okay.
Well, we'll leave our listeners on this angry note then.
Okay, perfect. So, if our angry listeners would like to leave us a positive review, because that would be awesome, they can review us on Spotify, on iTunes, anywhere you like. It helps us in the end, so that would be super awesome. You can also visit us on our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com, or visit our social media, which is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, if you want to check us out for updates there. We do also have a Patreon if you would like to donate to the show, so that is Wheel of Crime at Patreon. And I think lastly, we have an email that you can contact us at if you have any thoughts or feelings you'd like to share with us, and that is www.wheelofcrime@gmail.com. Just kidding, it's wheelofcrime@gmail.com. Haha. I don't know what I'm saying.
And with that, we will see you next week for another new episode.
Yes, it will be very super stellar. I will have something really cool to share, I imagine.
I can imagine too. Okay, bye.
Bye.